Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We have a presentation with ATEX Resources, which trades on the Venture Exchange under the ticker ATX. With me, I have Raymond Jannas, CEO, and Ben Pullinger, SVP. Before we get started, as always, this presentation will contain forward-looking statements. If you'd like to know more about those, you can find them on the presentation on the website. And there will be a Q&A section, so feel free to put your questions in the bottom in the Q&A box. And without that out of the way, I'd like to introduce Ben Pullinger and Raymond Jannas.
Hello,
how are you?
I'm Raymond Jannas, CEO of ATEX Resources. I'm presently at the core shack in the town of Valeriano, which is about 120 kilometers, in this case, west of our project Valeriano, which is close to the Argentine border in the high Andes of Chile. Just as a background, because Ben is going to do all the presentation, he's a great presenter. I just wanted to talk to you guys a bit about myself. I'm a Chilean geologist, been in the field for 40 years, fortunately related with quite a few discoveries. You will see that on the presentation. And Vallenar has been one of the nice cities or towns for my discoveries. Actually, I have 4 discoveries associated with this small town with 50,000 people in Chile. The first one was Pascua Lama, right, which everybody knows about it. At my time, we called it Nevada. Then it was followed by La Fortuna's name today that we call Morro Fortuna in our times of Metallica Resources in the 90s. And after that, I came in the 2010 and discovery of La Cortadera now, no, we called it Joanna, owned by Hot Chile. And now Valeriano, which is our project as ATEX, which I brought in initially in Hot Minerals, Hot Child. So this town has been fantastic, and I think this is the best project of all of them, together with Pasco, which is a fantastic one. And I'll leave that now to Ben. Any questions we can answer later, especially if you want to know about Chile.
Thanks, Raymond, and thank you, Deb and Adelaide, for having us and setting this up, and welcome everybody to learning a little bit more about ATEX today. We're looking forward to and in the process of defining a copper giant in Chile. We currently have 2 drill rigs turning on the ground, and we'll give you a little bit more history of how that all came about, including how Raymond joined the company and where we look to go in the future. One of the things that impressed me about this company the first time I heard, being the new kid on the block here, working with ATEX now just since June, was the serial successes that the people around this company have had. Raymond talked a bit about his history there. I think he was a bit modest, but between Craig and Craig, our chairman, and Raymond, they have a 40-year track record of discovering and advancing projects in this part of the world. Albert Schneider, who is one of the founders of this, again, a serious successful mining entrepreneur in this part of the world. And the list of deposits that you see there under the overview, are all well-known projects today. We're currently earning into 100% of the Valeriano project from the underlying vendors, and we'll talk more about that later on in the presentation. But the most exciting thing is we believe that we're sitting in what is emerging and looking to be a next generation, porphyry cluster, porphyry district, a new project, underground, mineable, bulk tonnage project perspective, could be one of the more exciting places to be in the world. Hole 17, which is really the highlight of our phase 2 program, completed earlier this year, returned 1,160 meters at 0.78% copper equivalent, including that 550 meters of 1.03%. Which is something that was very special, and we look forward to trying to replicate and extending in our next program. We're also surrounded by majors, and we'll give you a bit of an update on some of our neighbors as we move through the presentation. Again, in terms of the team, everybody on the list here, from Raymond through to our exploration manager, Francisco, has been involved in exploration, moving projects forward, advancing projects, and have success under their belt. Thomas, our CFO, for example, has worked with Albrecht and Raymond and projects in the past. Craig have that long history together of discovery, advancing projects, and myself having recently been put out of work through the acquisition of Golden Star, but I've been involved in taking companies from all the way from exploration stage through to commercial production in the case of Rock Gold. I want to spend a bit of time here just talking about our board, because I think there's some very important people here to mention. We've briefly talked about Craig a couple times and what he brings to the team, and the fact that him and Raymond have a career together that has outlasted most other relationships, and the fact they've been part of building a very successful company, Metallica, which is where Pierre Lassonde initially got involved with the group, having financed Metallica, Craig running it, and Raymond initially as VP Exploration. So having Pierre stepping in as ATEX's largest shareholder right now is really bringing the band back together, and with success and time together, reloading and going again with what we believe is a pretty spectacular project. I do want to point out Alejandra Wood here at this point, and Yamili Cruz, for two reasons. I'll start with Alejandra because if you look at her resume, she is one of the most connected, most impressive, and most visible people in the Chilean kind of copper mining spectrum. Shortly after having joined the board of ATEX, she was offered the opportunity to join the board of Codelco, and now sits on two boards, Codelco and ATEX. So really impressive access to the right people, access to greater trends, and provides a lot of insight and a lot of intelligence to the company. Yamili Cruz as well, very much a powerhouse in her own right, being part of multiple multi-billion-dollar build-outs, where she worked as a project engineer at Hatch, and now in her own right, running her own company focused on inclusivity, diversity, and equity in the mining space. So starting to build out a board that fits the project in terms of where this company wants to go in the future. Not that this year has been a great year to compare ourselves against anybody, except for the last few days, which it's been nice to see the market turning around and a little bit of life in there again. Excuse me for that. But year on year, if you compare us against major indices that track our business, we're still outperforming, up 50% year to date. But I think the most important thing on this slide here is that currently, with two drill rigs turning, we have just under $16 million in the treasury. We're well funded to go out and do a lot of work, and we have a share register that's maturing, with the likes of Rob Cohen coming in as a major shareholder through 1832 on our last financing, and really starting to build again the share register that can support this, with the likes of Pierre, other groups behind us, and take this through the next few levels that we see as this project continues to see ahead of us, as we continue to see this project grow. A little bit of geography just before we jump into the project itself. This belt between the Maricunga belt, the link belt as we call it, linking the Maricunga and El Indio, and the El Indio belt really needs no introduction. This is one of the most famous geological territories in the world. Some of the biggest deposits in the world are all here, and a lot of the biggest mining companies in the world are all here. So being a junior, exploring on the footstep and following up on a lot of the work that has been done here historically is quite a privilege. If you look at where Valeriano sits, we're surrounded by majors with Antofagasta and Barrick over here, and then discoveries that Raymond and Craig have worked on together at La Fortuna here. But then also on the north end of this belt, you see an emergence of a new porphyry cluster with Filo and not Josemaria, Los Helados and NGEX approaching each other, as well as a bunch of other companies making news and making headlines today. This is a great part of the world to be exploring, about 125 kilometers away from Vallenar, and in a district that is known to host giant deposits. This slide actually is great because it really gives a good feel for not only the topography, but you get to see how close we sit to the El Encierro project. You get to see exactly where the project is, and it just gives a nice lay of the land in terms of this being a high Andean desert. Our neighbors to north, El Encierro, 6 kilometers along this ridge from us. I think their camp is over here, as they've started up their drilling program at the same time as we have. Our camp here, which is now fully functioning. Raymond was actually up there yesterday, so any questions about that you can ask him. And up here we have 2 drill rigs turning at the moment. One of the things that's really important about this slide, though, is if you look at this in terms of a future production scenario. Yes, we're drilling at 4,200 to 4,400 meters, and between 800 meters and 900 meters, where we really start to get into strong porphyry mineralization. But if you look at the valleys on either side of this ridge, they incise from the peaks by about 500 meters. So if you were to envisage that in the future as a way to access this project with dual declines or dual ramps, you can very quickly ramp into the top of these projects, drill them out, and then develop them. Everything is very well set up from that perspective, just based on the natural topography. What was really interesting for us this year is on the same day that we announced our hole 17 results, Encierro announced its maiden resource of 522 million tons, grading 0.79% copper equivalent. So really high grade, strong start with their resource. And that was included within a 2.5 billion ton mineral inventory. You know, it really gives a good indication of, you know, the growth potential in this district, especially with ATEX just getting started. But they believe that there's more to find, more to be found, and we do too. And that's why we think this is just really, you know, both these projects are really just scratching the surface of what we believe will ultimately become a much bigger district. In terms of a high level view of the project geology, so the warm colors that you see on this map here are the granodioritic porphyries, which are responsible for the grade and bringing all the juice that mineralizes the rhyolites around it, which are the gray rocks. What's really interesting here, and we think is something that will be very beneficial to the project in the future, is that unlike other projects which are hosted in iron-rich rocks like andesite, the rhyolitic rocks here are high silica, low iron. So we don't see a lot of pyrite. We just see very well disseminated chalcopyrite with lesser bornite mineralization. And then capping that off, we have a lower grade high sulfidation blanket that sits on top of that grades about 0.3 to 0.5% copper equivalent and is about 250 meters thick. You know, when Raymond first picked up this project for Hochschild, he was looking for two things. One, that was something that could be a company maintainer, and there was a small gold oxide resource at surface that looked like it had potential to grow. And the other was a company changer. In this case, hole 14, which was the initial discovery hole by Hochschild, proved Raymond to be correct. Although it was at a time when no one was really too worried about copper, you know, it intersected 272 meters of 1% within a 1,194 meter at 0.78% copper equivalent interval. It's pretty spectacular. And one of the things that ATEX wanted to do when they first stepped onto the project was prove that that was continuous, prove that it had room to grow, which we did with hole 17, and it's very clear on this side as well, and show that there was much more to be done. Not only are we looking to step out and continue to follow up on those high grade results, but we're looking to see what else is out there. This part of the project, for example, over to the east over here, has never been tested. For example, hole 11, which is a hole that we're coming out of. Every time we look at that hole, we find more exciting things that we didn't realize were there, and it indicates more potential on this property. In terms of tying that in with what we see from the geophysics, and the 2011 IP survey, which was done by Hochschild, shows really did a good job of imaging just that top of the porphyry environment. This green outline here, coincident with this here in the plan view. And then this was followed up in 2022 by a metallurgic study completed by ATEX, really with the intent to try and see as deep as we can and see what that resistivity profile looks deeper down. In both cases, we see an anomaly in the realms of 3 kilometers. Very coincident in both cases. And the difference here on the MT survey being, you know, to see down to 2 kilometers deep and seeing that this is open in all directions, where today we only have it defined geologically through drilling about 800 and 850 meters. You know, the IP survey in 2011 really just, you know, showed the top of that, but now we can see much deeper and really see how much space we still have to test and grow this project. And that gets us to where we are at the end of our last program. You know, the title here, you know, big step outs and high grade. This is actually something that was really important to the story. When Raymond, you know, came up with the concept of the drill program, got the financing, and convinced Pierre to hand over his checkbook and allow the company to start drilling. You know, there was no attempt to drill, you know, small, you know, twin holes or try and take small step outs and prove this incrementally. He immediately went about making sure that, you know, whatever we did here had the chance to get to the scale as quickly as possible, prove up the high grade, and show that this project was and had the ability to be a world-class project. So 200 meter step outs were planned, hole 19 to the north and hole 17 over here to the south. Hole 17, a spectacular success with the 1,160 meters at 0.78% copper equivalent with the 550 meter core, following up from that hole we talked about earlier, the Hochschild hole 14, which had that 272 meters of 1% copper equivalent mineralization. Hole 19, unfortunately, ended up getting abandoned before it got to target depth when the drillers dropped the core barrel down the hole and were unable to complete the hole, but still returned 650 meters of 0.65% copper equivalent. I might just pause here and just reflect on that, because that was actually something we identified as a key risk for this project going forward. And when Raymond initially raised that capital and went out to tender on a drill contract in a very tight market, there was only one contractor that bid, and they were actually great in terms of the fact that they were able to complete hole 17. For the rest, though, we had a lot of problems, and we wanted to make sure that we set ourselves up for success with this project and went out and got the best contractors that we can with the right equipment and engaged them as early as possible. We sat down with them 4 months ago and laid out our plans to drill this program. And since then, they've entered the country, set up an account, set up their equipment, hired people, and are sitting on the project right now and drilling away. And it looks like things are going quite well. So that gets us to just a discussion about what this high grade means to us, but then also flicking onto where we plan to go going forward. On this slide, one of the things I really like to remind myself of and remind everybody else of is that this, from top to bottom on hole 17, is 2 kilometers. For those of us in Toronto, that's 4 CN towers stacked on top of each other with this high grade zone here, 550 meters, a CN tower and a half tall in hole 17. Each of these holes, again, is 200 meters apart. So if you start to think of that in terms of this scale and size of city blocks, you very quickly get a picture for how big this actually is. The other thing that's very impressive about this and that we'd like to talk about is the fact that the top 650 meters of each 3 of these holes ranges between 0.63% copper equivalent and 0.65% copper equivalent. It's consistent, it's predictable, and it is open in both directions. And that consistency of grade is true even in the high grade zone here, where the highest grade that covers that 1.03% is 2.44% copper over 2 meters. It's not spiky, it's consistent, it's very well disseminated, and you see that in the core. When you're holding the core in your hand and you're looking at it, the chalcopyrite is just well disseminated throughout the whole system. In addition to that, and this is one of the coolest things about this project, and really one of the cool things about drilling the project out the way we are using directional drilling, which we'll touch on in a second, is we believe that not only do we have one of these high-grade trends, which we've now hit in 2 holes, 14 and 17, we believe that we would have hit it in 19 had we completed it, and we believe they are open to the north and south. But based on what we see in the mag, some of the geology, and a couple of sniffs that we see in hole 16, we believe that there is the potential for a second trend over here, and we want to be able to test that as well. So this really fits into our strategy for this year, which is extending that strike length by 400 meters between hole 11, which is a 200-meter step out to the north of 14. Hole 21, it's a 200-meter step out to the south of 17, also testing this high-grade trend and starting to see exactly how big this whole system could be. And that brings us to phase 3, where you can currently see we have 2 drill rigs on surface now, one sitting here on Val 11 and one sitting here on hole 21. The intent being that we can drill multiple holes with each setup, saving ourselves a lot of time, saving a lot of money, being very efficient, and maintaining a very small footprint as we quickly add size and define what we already know to be something quite special. One of the really cool things about using directional drilling here and being able to plan these orders, it also means we get to manage our drill program pretty much in live timing. And what I mean by that is, because the mineralization is so visible, we can see it, and the geologists can pretty much put their finger on what the grade is as that rock comes out of the ground, which allows us to make very quick decisions about where we put that next hole. If we like what we see in hole 11, for example, we can very quickly turn, get the directional motor out, put in a cut to the north, and get a 200-meter extension hole without having to re-drill the top of the hole. We can also come back in the other direction. We can move around in 3 dimensions here, and there's no limit to what we can do, but we can do it live as well. So it's a very efficient way to drill and do damage on this deposit very quickly. What that looks like, kind of in section view, and move some things around here, is from hole 11, we came out of the bottom of an already reamed hole. It allowed us to set a wedge, get the directional motor out, and start cutting towards what we believe is this high-grade porphyry trend over here. You can see hole 19, which returned at 650 meters at 0.65 copper equivalent over here. The cool thing about that is we only have to drill about 600 to 800 meters to pass through that mineralization on each of these cuts. So we don't have to drill the top 800 meters. Each hole, instead of now having to drill 2-kilometer deep holes, each of these holes now is between 600 and 800 meters. It allows us to make progress a lot faster and move much quicker, and hopefully get results much quicker as well. There you can see the section for that. The section for hole 21, which is in the middle here, sits over here, and you can see the same thing over here. Hole 17 is 200 meters north of this section. You can see the high-grade mineralization in there. Hole 21 will be follow-up, same as 11, looking to repeat that high-grade mineralization and actually be able to get across it, get a better cut through it. And then we have the same option to immediately follow up below. If we like what we see, we can even follow up above, but we can also turn to the south and get another 200-meter step out and really start to grow that mineralization and that strike length of that high grade very quickly. Here's what it looks like on a long section. So we'll be moving from having proven this high grade over, depending on how much credit you give to each side of these, between 400 meters and 600 meters to 800 meters if we're successful on these two holes. And then if we come out this way, 1,000 meters and beyond, which really would start to add some tons and some critical mass to this high grade zone very quickly. And we can do the majority of that drilling from just 2 setups without having to move. So a very efficient and effective way to add a lot of tonnage potential through this drill program. Just how good are these results? So in terms of ranking us against our peers, a lot of which are household names in the industry right now, including Philo. This would rank as the 4th best within the top 5 of copper intersections in the world over the last few years. And what's interesting as well, this is only one drill hole from each company. But if you were to take the historical holes from Valeriano and put them into this as well, all those holes would actually show up on this list. It's consistent, it's continuous, it's high grade, and it's open in all directions. So we're very excited to be back drilling and moving the project forward right now. If you look at this graph, which shows the development and project list of projects in South America on copper, as it says, not copper equivalent, on just copper grades, you can already start to see that Valeriano, at the initial resource that was done before we started drilling our phase 2 program. So this was done in 2020. Sits over here. I think with the drilling that we did in 2022 and beyond, we can already start to make a case that we're starting to move upwards in grade and tonnage over to the side here. So already in a very competitive part of this graph. But then if you have to start to think of this in terms of a district and in terms of a cluster, you've got Encierro with their maiden resource over here, put the 2 projects together, and we're starting to move off into this direction here. With a little bit of credit from the global inventory that Encierro has and what we might find along the way as well, this very quickly moves into this top right area of the graph over here, where at least in this coverage universe, there's nothing else like it in the market. We believe that this, being in a high Andean desert, in an environment where open pits are getting harder and harder to permit, and the world needs high-grade, high-quality copper projects, we think this district is shaping up to be something special, and we're very excited to be part of drilling that out and following through on our plans with this project. Next steps are very much as you would expect. We intend to continue to grow that high grade that was intersected in holes 17 and 14. We intend to test that second trend that sits below 16 and also grow that global footprint. As we get through this, we want to be able to show that this has the scale and grade to stand alone as a world-class underground bulk mineable deposit with a significant resource base. And as we go along that complete and metallurgical test work and starting to do the work that allows us to de-risk this project from day one. Just a quick note on our budget here. So one of the things that I think is really important about this slide is that more than 85% of all capital raised on this project goes directly into project costs supporting drilling. So a very high percentage is of dollars raised results to work in the ground. And I think that's key to this, to what we're doing here, and shows that we're spending money in the right place. The total budget for the year to complete our 18,000 meter program that we'd like to do is about $17 million. So based on results at the end of this year and into next year, we'd probably need to come back to the market and raise a little bit more money. But with the 16, give or take, just under $16 million Canadian that we have in our account right now, we're in a position to do a lot of work and hopefully return some very strong results through the next quarter at the project. The last slide to chat about today is just in terms of what we have outstanding on option payments. We've got 2 payments left to make, one in 2023, which I should note that payment is baked into that budget that you see above. One payment to be made in 2023 and another in 2025. We're pretty much by the end of this program have exceeded all of those work commitments. And so we're very much on track for being able to exercise our right to acquire 100% of this project going forward. I think at that point, I'll hand it back to Deb and any questions.
Thanks for the overview, Ben. I don't see any audience questions, so maybe we'll start with some of our questions. By ours, I mean Magda's.
Yeah, so thanks for the overview, Ben. So I wanted to go back to the history for a moment. And I mean, the big question is like, why did previous operators not capitalize on this big porphyry opportunity at Valeriano?
I think I'll leave that one for Raymond.
Yeah. Well, I picked it up for Hochschild Mining when I was VP Exploration and Mining Geology in 2007 through 2000, almost 2010. I picked it up because of the motives that Ben was saying, and that there could be a changer to the company with this deeper porphyry. I left when drilling started, so I don't know why they decided to leave it, but probably it's because they needed to find a new mine with the small production that they had and increase their production. And copper was not a main product for them, and the price was not high at the time. So I think that's why they left it. And keep in mind that they own 10% of the company that owns Valeriano today, Hochschild.
Right. All right, thank you. And then shifting towards the grade. So now you have 2 drill holes with, significant lengths of over 1% copper equivalent. So why is this significant, and what role could this play in the future?
I'll pick this up too, Ben, thanks. I think the future of the project is going to be underground mining, probably block caving. And really to see that possibility and visualize it, you need continuity of high grade. We only had one hole with high grade, that was a 14 with 240 meters at 1%. And we went after extensions at 200 meters. We only completed drill hole 17 that gave us 550 meters, 1.03. So that is really exciting that it appears that there is continuity of higher grade, and this will really be what will move the project forward on underground operation.
Thank you. And then moving forward to phase 3, which has just started. Is it just these parent holes with like the children off of them, or will you be doing any more conventional drilling as well?
So I mean, for the initial part of this program, it's really going to be about efficiency and maximizing the amount of drill intersections we can get as we go. But as soon as the scale starts to show up, then we have to rethink the plan, right? If the scale continues to be what it is, then we have to consider whether we move into other parts of the system. And that will be a very good problem for us to have at that point. For now, we're very focused on getting these holes done, showing that continuity of high grade, growing that high grade trend, but also growing that envelope around it. I mean, remember the grade around that high grade, we do spend a lot of time talking about that high grade, but the grade around it is stuff that's in production all over the world right now, between 0.6 and 0.8% copper equivalent. That high grade, as Raymond said, is really what will ultimately get this program financed and provide that quick payback that you need to make that big capital investment. But all the other stuff that we're drilling as well is pretty spectacular too. And in terms of the fact that we've only been able to drill this out by 800 and 850 meters right now, and we're chasing that trend, and it's open in all directions, means we've got a lot of work still to do here in the future. As Craig, our chairman, always says, this project needs 50 holes. The more we can do with directional drilling, obviously the more efficient it'll get. But there's a lot of exploration to be done outside of these 2 trends still that we'll get to once we know once we see how this next program shapes up.
All right. And is it possible to estimate just like how much, more efficient you are, like in terms of time or in terms of cost by using this technology, or is it kind of too early?
I mean, I can give you a very simple way of looking at it, and this way I wrap my head around it is, so take, for example, this hole here. So this hole was drilled in 2014, so we were able to move down and come off at about 800 meters. So if you factor in the cost of that 800 meters, that we don't have to drill, and then you drill one hole out of that, so that's about a 50% saving over there. If you drill 2 holes out of there, then or 3 or 4, it just starts to become exponential. So the efficiency on this is really it's logarithmic. Like the more holes that you drill out of each permit, each parent hole, the more efficient the program is. But also the pace at which you're able to move as well is important, because our biggest fixed cost on this project is running our camp and maintaining the people in camp. So the faster we're drilling, the more of these cuts that we're doing, the more meters per dollar spent we're getting, and that really it has a big impact on the overall project economics.
And also, you could think that in the future you can come back into these holes for infill.
Great point.
drilling.
Yeah.
Infill drilling in the future, when you have to go into a measured and indicated reserve or resource or a reserve, you can come back and do holes for infill purpose, and that's another tremendous advantage.
Wow, that's exciting. Cool. And then staying with phase 3, in October, you've kind of mentioned 3 goals, how you were going to do step outs to the north and south, you're going to expand the high grade trend and test for parallel trends. So can you kind of quickly touch on what that would look like?
So I mean, we're on the right slide for that. So we'll look at on the long section view. Well, we'll talk about these 2 slides here. So the whole 2021. So one of the cool things about this again is, we get to kind of like pick our own adventure as we're drilling these holes. We don't have to drill these holes in any particular sequence, as long as we come from the top and go down to the bottom. We don't have to finish the bottom of this hole, for example, if we don't like what we're seeing. But if we do like what we're seeing, we can then come out and, as Raymond said, we can actually finger them out in 3 directions, right? We can drill to the south, we can drill to the north, we can drill above it, and we can drill below it. But from this position as well, this is one of the reasons we picked the collar for hole 21, is it allows us to test this second trend over here, which you see, this is that second mag trend over here. If we like what we see here, I mean, it gives us the potential then to see if there's other, whether we come back to 16 and come out the back of 16 or set up a new collar somewhere else, it just opens up a whole new frontier for us on this project that hasn't been tested. So in addition to, being able to test it, our bread and butter right now and grow that high grade trend for not a lot of extra capital, for not a lot of extra effort, we can, we can potentially double our success rate here and get out and test this second trend. So that's huge for us, and something that I think would be a bit of a game changer for the project, and we'd be very excited if we got that success. In terms of kind of the main aim here, which is really about growing the strike length of this high grade zone. If we talked about it, if you give us 100 meters of credit on each side of this, this is 600 meters in definition right now. If we're successful in 21, that goes to 800 meters. If we're successful in hole 11, that gets us, depending on how much influence you get, it gets us close to 1 kilometer. If we then come out the other way on hole 11, we can grow this up to 1.2 kilometers. So if you just, the math is actually pretty easy. If you look at, anywhere from 800 meters along strike by 1.2 kilometers along strike, 300 to 500 meters true width, 500-600 meters height, that adds up to a 2.6 SG. That adds it to a significant amount of tons really quickly, and shows that the kind of scale that we're looking for here. This is and has the opportunity to become and grow into a very big, significant project.
All right, yeah. So it sounds like you'll be able to should be able to build quickly. All right, and then we have one audience question. It's about results. Will you be releasing these hole by hole or in bunches, and how often will we see results?
Well, with respect to that, we will be releasing hole by hole or by 2 holes, because they're going in parallel, 2 machines. As soon as we get the complete hole or the hole completed, it'll take at least 1 month before we have assay results back. So time-wise, we don't see anything before maybe end of this year, beginning of next year. But from then on, it'll be quite continuous. On the whole, it depends on each one. But we will be doing not on a batch, but on an independent results.
All right. And then kind of zooming out a little bit as we wrap up these technical questions. So it looks like you're kind of in a bit of a porphyry kind of cluster. And can you talk about like the significance of that and how you fit into within this emerging cluster?
Raymond, I'll give this one to you because you know this area so well and you know how this plays out.
Well, definitely it's an emerging cluster and it's high quality and it's world class. Now, the grade, as always, it's going to be underground in both areas, Adelaide, Encierro, and over here. How is this going to pan out? I think it really depends on how the whole district is integrated, because there's a lot of synergy to work together between the companies that own the different parts. And additionally, we are still looking at our project on a standalone basis. Okay, and I think that our neighbors are thinking in the same way. So we can prove a standalone each one. Imagine what this cluster is going to turn into. Now, add on to that everything that's happening in the border between Chile and Argentina, close to Filo del Sol, Los Helados, and all that area. So this district is really picking up, and it's going to be something significant in the future.
All right. Well, that sounds pretty exciting. Thank you. I think that's all the technical questions I had.
That was excellent.
No, thanks all the audience. I don't know how many were with us, but thank you for joining us. And we're available at any time for further questions.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. If you have any further questions or you want a one-on-one meeting, feel free to reach out to myself or Magda and we'll get that set up for you. Yeah, appreciate your time, Ben and Raymond.
Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Be well. Bye-bye.